to the 80-20 Baseball Podcast. Strike! The 80-20 Coaching Masterclass, our weekly get-together where coaches go from new to good and good to great. Mastering the fundamentals and the art of coaching.
Welcome, baseball community. Coach Bo here. Pumped up, as always, to be here each week with all of you. Every Tuesday coming out with a new episode. And in this episode, we have Coach Adam Sarancik. He's authored 5 impactful books, including his most recent book, which I just finished the other day. An excellent book, The Car Ride Home, Respecting Youth at a Vulnerable Place and Time. In fact, I have it in my hand right now. Beautiful artwork on the front and back cover. And inside is an awesome story about Dylan, a youth baseball player, his experience, the car ride home, and then as he becomes a parent. Just a great book, a quick read. Coach Sarancik is the owner of Elevate Sports Academy. He's a longtime contributor to the Inside Pitch magazine and CoachesInsider.com, and a sought-after speaker who emphasizes life lessons through sports. Recently celebrated 50 years of marriage and brings decades of wisdom on balance, family, and building championship cultures. His website is coachingchampionsforlife.com, coachingchampionsforlife.com. We're going to break Coach Sarancik's interview into 2 30-minute-ish parts. Part 1 this week, part 2 next week. Before we dive into part 1, I hope all of you had an awesome 4th of July. The 4th of July is just the best. So I hope you all had an awesome 4th of July. And I hope all of you are having an awesome summer. Speaking of awesomeness, Coach Sarancik breaks down some awesome topics in our interview. Here are 6 of the topics Coach Sarancik is going to discuss. Why the offseason can be a make or break time for coaches who want to be awesome, that want to be great next year or next season, and how to actually use that time wisely, how to balance family life and being a good coach. He also discusses how to build a coaching staff, even at the youth level, that's truly on the same page, why telling is not teaching, and a powerful way top coaches demonstrate everything so players actually get better, the smart and not so smart ways to use today's technology with young players, and how to steal secrets from the best coaches in any sport by watching what happens off the ball, not just the highlight plays. Plus, he'll also share a simple but powerful little-known acronym he uses to truly get to know potential assistant coaches and current assistant coaches on a deeper level. With that said, let's dive into part 1 of our interview with Coach Adam Sarancik. I'm pumped up to be here today with Coach Adam Sarancik. How you doing, Coach?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Coach Bo.
I love having you on. You have been on more than anybody, and with your vault of knowledge, I think we could probably have you on every month for the next 10 years and never cover everything. With that said, today we're going to discuss off-season stuff. We're going to have some other topics too. First off, before we dive into that, what's new with you?
Well, Coach, first, thanks for having me on. I always appreciate it. Always have a good time. And thank you for all of the information that you provide every week to coaches out there. If they're listening, they're making an extra commitment to be better at what they do and helping them do that. So thank you for having me, and thank you for everything that you do. I just published my 5th book, The Car Ride Home. You wrote the endorsement for it. Sales are going good. I tend to write books with a message. They're not long books. They don't take long to read. In the off season, you can pick up one of my books, and hopefully the message there, or The Car Ride Home, is obviously about that relationship between parent and child after the game, when parents are trying to figure out what they should say to their son or daughter about the game, if anything. And when they start doing that, it tends to be a habit, game after game, year after year, and they maybe don't realize the impact that is having on their child and their views about the game, their love for the game, and things like that. I wrote a book called A Ground Ball to Shortstop, How and Why Coaches See Their Game Differently Than Anyone Else. Again, try to get parents to identify with a coach, and the coach is looking at the player as a 3-part project: person, athlete, and player. That's my philosophy, whereas the parents sometimes just look at the players out in the field and they'll see a ground ball to shortstop and they think, was it fielded cleanly and thrown accurately to first base, and was the out obtained? And that's all they see. And the coaches see 100 other details leading up to, during, and after that. that. I tend to write books that hopefully parents will read either during the season or off season, and it'll resonate with them, the message, and say, hadn't thought about it that way before. And maybe it'll help them, and if they're coaches, in the way they coach, and maybe it'll help them as just parents in the way they view their interaction with their child generally and in their sports.
Well, I finished your most recent book, like you mentioned, The Car Ride Home. I finished it a couple nights ago, and I really like books that have a message to learn from, but are wrapped into a story. When I'm reading about Dylan and his experience, you made it into a very interesting story. The message hits viscerally, and I think it sticks more, and you can feel Dylan's pain and how you wrote it very descriptively. You get a little bit more of a 360, a three-dimensional feel about the car ride home and the discussions and the feelings and some of those unsaid things. And I highly recommend it. Really a well-written story. Love the book. I got it right here. With that said, I know we discussed talking about some off-season topics here. Where do you want to start with that?
Yeah, I wrote an article recently for coachesinsider.com called The 10 Most Important Things a Coach Should Do in the Offseason. The genesis for that article was, like yourself, Coach, I'm thinking about how can I help coaches who are really invested in coaching? How can I help them be better? They want to get better. And some of the things that really need to be done to have a better season and be more successful really need to be done in the off season. It's hard to gear up a week before the season, right? Okay, let's grab an assistant coach or two. Let's have a meeting and figure out what we're going to do this year. We appreciate the time and the effort that any parent or any coach is going to invest in a team. But if you really want to be the best coach possible for your players and team, there's a lot of things that can be done and could be done in the off season. I know you have some questions in that regard. Why don't we go through those and we'll see if we can give some information to your listeners that'll help them in that regard.
Definitely. So in the off season, we would like coaches to be proactive and continue their learning and continue growing and building their coaching skills. How do you recommend they kind of balance that with their family time during the off season? How much time do you think they should be allotting for coaching? What would be a nice little off season routine or some habits or tips you'd recommend for that?
The first point I would make with regard to coaching is if you really get into it, you're really getting on all aspects of using my philosophy, developing better people, better athletes, better players. It can become all consuming. Unfortunately, in the coaching business, some of the top coaches at all levels have a very high divorce rate. And it's because they become so all consumed with coaching, similar to the way that youth have become all consumed with sports, lost balance in their lives. And I think that's a real danger that we have to be careful of. I think a real important conversation needs to be had with your spouse, life partner, and family about how are we going to maintain balance, here to where I don't forget who you are and what's important to you. My wife and I just celebrated our 50th anniversary, our 50th wedding anniversary. And one of the things that I've always tried to remember is I married a friend. We were friends before we got married, and we tried to maintain that friendship for those 50 years. And a very important part in being a friend is never forgetting who the other person is. They have a life. They have things that are important in their lives. They have things, work and goals of their own. You have to support those things. Sometimes coaching becomes such an obsession that it, by default, almost becomes family is basically only supporting the coach and the coach's life. So there's a saying that I think is really appropriate, something I always try to keep in mind when I do coaches clinics. I always tell coaches is your family loves you, not your job. Make sure they get the best of you, not the rest of you. I think that's really important to remember. At all times, and this is going to lead in maybe our next topic too, I think you need to learn how to delegate and you need to learn how to prioritize. And coaching can never take priority over your family, your life partner, your sons, daughters. That always has to have a place year round. Yeah, coach is going to take more time during the season than the off season or whatever, but it can never take all the time. That's just something that just cannot happen if your marriage is going to stay strong. So you got to figure out, are we going to have meals together? At least dinner together. What is it that's important in your life, my children's lives? This is really hard to do for coaches, but I one time missed a state quarterfinal playoff game to attend a very important event in my child's life. I wasn't going to miss that event. I know a lot of coaches say, well, I can't be there for my child's sporting events, or I can't be there for graduations or whatever. And it's just, that's whoa. That's a red flag right there. That means something to your spouse, to your children, or whatever, that you're there for them. And a lot of times that means getting more help, getting more coaches to help you out, coaches that are as qualified and as committed as you are to the team and to the league and to the program. Other times it means just being more efficient at what you do. Again, if we're doing everything at the last minute, where the entire season is basically spent playing catch up, all right?
So you mentioned getting assistant coaches or leveraging others. Why is it important for a coach to, even in the offseason, even at the youth level, to look for assistants, to build those relationships with other coaches or potential coaches? And how do you evaluate and get to know potential assistant coaches beyond their baseball knowledge?
Yeah, that's really important. I've always used I don't know how often it's practical or coaches have the ability to do it, but I've always used a ratio of one coach for 3 players. If I have 12 players on the team, I want 4 coaches. But let's just say, as a game, an example, I want a coach for the outfielders. I want a coach for the infielders. I probably will manage, pitchers and catchers. And then I'm going to have a bench coach to make sure that everybody on the bench is engaged and thinking along with the game. And the bench coach probably goes down to the bullpen and makes sure the pitchers are getting warmed up properly between innings. So I've always used that just a guide for the number of coaches at a minimum. And the other thing I've done is I don't necessarily want parents to coach. If the parent is somebody I'm comfortable with, their qualifications, their commitment, their compatibility and personality and philosophy, fantastic. I don't have a problem with it. But if not, that doesn't mean I don't want them around the program at all. I really believe that coaches should coach. I see a lot of coaches hit ground balls, fly balls, feed machines, doing all this kind of stuff that parents or other people could be doing so they can actually get out and coach. What I'm getting at is the concept of help. I don't think is given enough attention, enough thought about. We need a lot of help for this. I see coaches, for example, prepping the field. God bless them for all the work they do getting the field ready. But you know what? You could have help doing that so that from the moment that the player shows up, you are developing a relationship with that player. I see coaches prepping field and talking to other coaches during dynamic movement routines, during throwing and receiving progression. That's when you should be coaching. You should be coaching from the moment the player shows up, or developing a relationship with the player from the time the player shows up till the time the player leaves, to the extent this is practical, but I think a lot of times it is. You should be off dragging the field when the players are doing dynamic movement routines. They should be being taught how to do them right, how to progress them day in and day out. Same thing throwing and receiving. I don't know when the last time I saw a youth coach on a daily basis coach the players during their throwing and receiving. I mean, they're yelling things out like, hey, let's throw accurately. Let's make it matter. They're giving general instructions, but they're really not coaching every one of the players and their grips, their throwing mechanics, all the things that go into throwing and receiving. They're not coaching it. They've given them a routine. These are the drills I want you to do. I expect you to take them seriously. And off they go from the time, the first week that they teach them through the end of the season. They're not teaching them day in and day out. That requires help. And then if you're going to be effective as coaches, you have to know these people. As you're going to have to make sure that you really understand how a person thinks when it comes to discipline, for example. I know coaches have gotten into trouble. Your philosophy with discipline is one thing, and the other coaches you even know is something completely different. He may be a yeller. He may be everybody runs type of person, et cetera, et cetera. I can tell you stories about coaches who've gotten fired, not for something they did, but because of something their assistant coach said or did. Okay. A real quick acronym that I teach all of my players, and I recommend coaches use it too to get to know other coaches. It's FORD: family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. So you say, tell me about your family. Tell me what you do for a living. What do you like to do for fun? 5 years from now, what's your life look like for you and your family, et cetera, et cetera. And that's how you get to know them. And when you come across recreation, you may find out that they have common interests. They like golfing, they like fishing, they like hunting, whatever. And you can go and spend some time with them if it seems like, they're the kind of person that will be committed to your program and somebody that you can get along with. Then you can, have some common interest and get to know them. That'll make you better coaches, because you absolutely have to be on the same page with regard to everything in your program with your assistant coach. They have to teach the same fundamentals. They have to have the same philosophy about why you're there. You develop people, athletes, and players. They have to understand how you guys are going to progress these players as people, athletes, and players. All of that, you have to be on the same page, because when you're not, then the kids are getting mixed messages. They're not being taught the same things. They're not feeling as secure with one coach as they are with the others. If your approach to discipline is different, all those things. So yeah, you need a lot of help, and the help has to be on the same page.
Leverage the summer, the off season, the early preseason to improve the synergy amongst the coaches. One thing too during the off season, Coach Sarancik and coaches could do is just take a few minutes, take 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, brainstorm. What are the roles? What are the major roles, tasks that parents could do? And then just have that list ready and then present that at the very beginning of the season to the parents and say, you all need to sign up for at least one of these, and have them sign up for, like you said, drag field, whatever it is, like you said, so you can coach. I tell you what, Adam, it's so interesting. If I were pulling up on a baseball field, if I were to bet with somebody that the coach would not be out there coaching up during the throwing and receiving, the throwing program, throwing routine, and say, hey, I bet you $20 that the coaches are not anywhere near the players doing their warm-up routine, I think you'd win that bet probably 9 out of 10 times. It's unfortunate. So why do you think coaches should try to stay proficient as an athlete, as a player? Of course, they're not going to be ready for the major leagues, but what are some benefits of them for coaches to stay proficient as an athlete, as a player themselves? And what are some strategies to efficiently and effectively do this?
It's hard because coaches are dads, moms, they're volunteering their time. They've got other family members, they've got work, they've got jobs that they're doing. And some of those jobs are 8, 10, 12 hours a day. So they're taking very precious time with volunteering to do the best they can do to be coaches. That's why they need so much help. Okay. But if you're going to be the best coach for the players in youth sports in particular, telling is not teaching. Okay. You've got to be able to demonstrate things. All right. As coach, let's just use ground balls for an example. All ground balls have 5 characteristics, right? They've got speed, spin, distance, direction, and height. Speed, spin, distance, direction, and height. If we're going to expect players to handle all those variations in a game, we've got to be able to hit all those variations in practice. Okay. Same thing with throwing BP. A lot of times players hit cage bombs all the time in practice because they're being given cookies in batting practice. They're not seeing changeups. They're not seeing curveballs. They're not seeing balls in different zones or whatever. So as a coach, you want to be first a teacher. First, you're a mentor. Part of being a mentor is being a teacher. And teaching means demonstrating. So if you're going to progress them, teach them and progress them, say in dynamic movement, you got to be able to do it all yourself, or somebody on your coaching staff has to be able to do all the movements to teach all the proprioceptive skills that you're going to try to teach these players and to be able to progress them. You've got to get yourself in shape. Bottom line is to be able to be active. The word coach is a verb. It's an action word. I never forget that. So to be a teacher, coach, to be active, you got to be in shape and you got to have skills. Okay? You've got to be able to hit all the different fly balls and ground balls. You've got to be able to demonstrate all the throws. You've got to demonstrate base running. God forbid, even at my age, I'm out there demonstrating sliding. I've got to be careful there. But one of my assistant coaches is going to be able to do it as well, right? But we've got to be able to teach, and we've got to be able to get out there and do all of this stuff. So in the off season, we got to practice these things. We've got to get ourselves in shape. But that's not realistic for who we are. It doesn't mean we can't coach. It just means that we need help. We need other people who can demonstrate it. This is some of the meetings that you have in the off season. Okay, these are our goals, and this is how we're going to progress these players and this team from this point to this point as people, as athletes, as players. How are we going to do that as a team, as a coaching group? Okay, who's going to take this on to lead the dynamic movement and stretching routine every day? Who's going to lead the throwing and receiving progression part of it? And this is not lead by talking and telling, it's lead by doing and demonstrating. Okay? So this is very important to remember when you're teaching youth. Youth today are not generally auditory learners. They're typically visual and kinesthetic learners. That's going to require demonstration. Okay. And so again, if you're just hitting fly balls and ground balls to them and you're not out there showing them how to take a proper drop step, reacting to the ball, and how to move your feet so that they're replacing their feet efficiently, so that they're making their, say, inside pivot efficiently. You can't just tell them, hey, move your feet. What does that mean? I always laugh, Coach. Just a quick story. I'm watching my 7-year-old grandson on his team practice and play games like that. Coaches don't even hear themselves sometimes. They'll say, hey, make sure you run through the base. Think of that from a 6 or 7-year-old's point of view. Run through the base. Okay. What does that exactly mean? Through the base. Are you going to hold it up and put my body through? What does through the base mean? We use things in baseball that we know what they mean, but these young athletes, I'm not sure what you mean, Coach, by that. Can you show me what you mean by that? Even things like, you know what? You need to hinge your hips, or you need to get into your hips. You need to use your hips. We know that in baseball and sports, those are really important things. But to a youth player, what does that mean? How are you going to teach me to use my hips or hinge my hips? So you need to put them up against the fence. They need to stick their bottom out until it touches the fence. And that's what it means to hinge my hips. I need to push my bottom back until it touches the fence. Okay, I'm a kinesthetic learner. Now I feel my butt touch that fence. Okay, now I know what coach means by hinging my hips. I think we got to remember that the easy way out is to be auditory, but unfortunately, kids today learn mostly by visual means and by kinesthetic means. So we've got to actually give some thought to how we're going to use those modalities in our teaching, and we got to actually teach.
Often coaches are encouraged to model behavior that is proper, mature behavior, especially during games, right? Treat the umpires like you want your players to treat the umpire. So we talk a lot about modeling behavior. I love how you took that idea, that thought of modeling, and said, hey, why not also leverage and increase the clarity and of expectations to model baseball actions? So it's here, watch me show you this baseball action. And like you said, I'm going to show you running through the base, because when I tell you to run through the base, half of you are going, run through? What is it? It increases clarity. It's much more efficient. Also, the bonus exercise, coach, of being active at practice. I've recommended on my podcast for coaches not to exercise if they do work out, if they have a workout routine, to not work out the day of practice and use practice as your workout. I was out there recently implementing 3 different routines. By the time I was done implementing those 3 routines, I'd completed a workout that was equivalent to like 2 of my normal workouts. We all know we need exercise. Exercise is awesome. Why not leverage that in and utilize that during practice time? I really like what you're saying there, Coach.
Yeah, I'll do that frequently too, Coach. I'll demonstrate and do the dynamic movement and stretching with my team. And then after I'm done, I'll go home and I'll do the weightlifting part of my workout if it's one of my 4 strength training days or whatever. But yeah, you can definitely incorporate your lifestyle into your coaching lifestyle and make it both work. Absolutely.
Speaking of watching coaches, why is it important, in your opinion, for us as coaches, definitely at the youth level and at every level, to watch other great coaches, good coaches, reputable coaches, elite coaches? Why is it important? And what do you look for when you go to watch other successful coaches in baseball or other sports?
Yeah, and I think you said something really key there. Other sports, there's so much to be learned from coaches in all sports, men, women. If they're successful, and I don't mean successful with just regard to their win-loss records, successful and players talking very highly about the kind of people that they are. I think that's the kind of coach you want to go watch. Is like players are excited to play for that coach, not because they just win a lot of games and championships, because they have a good time. They increase their love for the sport. They feel like they make them better people when they go play for them. So a lot of these women and men that are successful, so much can be learned from them, because you'll see that while they have different personalities, Coach, the way they go about establishing culture, the way they go about developing servant leaders, the way they go about their coaching methodology, they have a lot of similarities amongst themselves and things that you can adapt to your own coaching. Coaches now are listening to this podcast and they're thinking, okay, I can use that. And that's the strength of your whole philosophy and your podcast and all the materials you put out, is you want this to become immediately useful to people. The information, I think we were talking before the podcast, what you give to baseball players could be adopted to softball coaches. And what is applicable to baseball and softball coaches can be applicable to all the sports, okay, and to our lives generally. Again, we're developing people, athletes, and players. So the people-athlete part transcends all the sports. Okay, so I've always tried to, I was lucky. I grew up in Southern California when Augie Garrido coached at Cal State Fullerton, Rod Dato coached at USC, John Wooden coached at UCLA, and I was lucky to watch all of them coach in games and practices and learn so much from them and watching them and listening to them at clinics. What I tried to do, though, when I recommended coaches, is I tried to watch the process of how they coached, okay? So in games, I didn't watch what was happening on the ball. I watched what was happening off the ball. Say in baseball, I'm watching how they shifted their defenses, okay? And I thought, okay, why are they doing that? Or why did they run this first and third play in this situation with that hitter's up? Or why did they approach this hitter that way? I'm always thinking about the why they did. I don't care about the score. I don't care whether the batter hit a home run or struck out. I'm thinking about the approach that they used to get the result. Okay, whether it's the way they turn a double play, the way they run a relay, the way they run their first and thirds, or bunt defenses, whatever. I'm asking why. And you can learn the same thing by watching other coaches in other sports too. If you got to get to know about that sport and the ins and outs of the sport, but then you can ask yourself, why did the coach make that substitution at that time? What did that player bring to the game? It's more than just the player being taken out was tired. There's a tactical, strategic reason why that coach brought that player in at that time. You can learn a lot about game management. You can learn about how to run practices. Sometimes it's just the energy by which the practice is run. Okay, you go watch coaches coach at the next level, whether it's high school for youth coaches or college for high school coaches. The first thing you're going to notice is A, the organization, and B, the energy. The energy is just always there. Okay, it's so important as you get higher and higher level competition and you're trying to push your players to be the best you can be, that the energy maintains. It's important at all levels, but you'll notice that the energy increases as they go up. But bottom line is find coaches at the next level. Okay, it can be the next level in youth ball, say the highest level in youth ball at your age group, or it can be youth to high school or college. Find coaches at the next level who are really successful, both as long tenured people and winning, but more importantly, how they treat their players. Go watch them coach, especially at practice. Try to go watch practices of these other coaches, and you will learn so much that can be adapted to your own coaching.
Reverse engineer their process. I like how you explain that, to not just get caught up in that highlight reel play or the home run that went 400 feet or whatever. It's reverse engineer the why behind their process. And that's really where, as coaches, we can get a lot better, a lot faster. And I would add to that, well, you actually already alluded to it. Look for the commonalities within those process of the successful, because there are a lot of successful coaches that do things that are kind of one-off things that they do that are not really, I say it's called in spite of coaching. They are good in spite of this. There are coaches that have had a lot of success yelling a lot at players. And I would say they probably would have even a little bit more success if they yelled less. They won in spite of yelling, not because of the yelling. So reverse engineer the coaching process, ask the why. What are your thoughts on this? I've found a lot. One of the best ways for me that I've seen to be able to get in the head of a coach is listen to interviews, post-game interviews it's not at a clinic. I love the ABCA video. I was watching a couple just earlier this week. Those are great, but listen to the beat reporter, some reporter who doesn't even know the game that well, but asks a very good question like, what was the reason behind this sacrifice bunt in this situation? Or why did you pinch hit? I love interviews like that because it gets you into the head of the coach. Now, I will say this, like anything in life, sometimes you have to read between the lines because there's a lot of proprietary intellectual property that these coaches have in their heads that they do not want to give away. They don't want to share. But if you read between the lines, sometimes they will just say it. But sometimes you have to read between the lines, right? But what do you think about listening to coaching interviews to help reverse engineer their method, to their process?
Yes, that's so good. Yeah, we should probably mention, Coach, more than half the time, you're probably going to learn more about what not to do as to what to do. But that's valuable information too, okay? These coaches, they're still improving hopefully every day. And so they're maybe doing a lot of things that you look at and say, I'm not sure I can buy into that. That's okay. Just seeing it and saying, okay, I saw when that happened, how it happened, and I'm going to handle it differently. But at least it got you thinking about it. But you're absolutely right, Coach. I love interviews, and I picked up a lot of things through those interviews over the years. Yes, definitely listen to anytime a coach is being interviewed. I tend to listen to a lot of sports talk radio. Anytime they're interviewing a coach that I respect, I'm going to listen to the interview. Let's put it that way, because they're going to give me information, at least one thing that I can use for sure. It's always some angle. Wake up every day and just say, I want to get better today. Everybody out there that I'm going to come into contact with today knows something that I need to know. That's a great philosophy of life. Everybody out there, they have something that I can learn from today. And you'd be surprised just using that philosophy, how it'll just make you a better person, a better coach. Yeah.
You got to wake up curious. You got to be curious throughout your day with some filters there too, like your values. Be curious, learn, and then filter it through your principles and your values so you don't cross lines and stay on the right path. All right, that wraps up part one of our interview with Coach Sarancik. We'll do part two next Tuesday, coming out every Tuesday with a new episode. Take this information, utilize it. Go over to 8020baseball.com and also go over to 8020baseball.com. We're talking about practice plans and getting organized for the season. So much valuable time. Save yourself all the searching and the vetting, the collecting, the organizing, and testing. Over at 8020baseball.com, there's the 8020 baseball coaching system. There's two levels. You can get all the drills or you can get the full system right there at 8020baseball.com. With that, you get the keys to go out and run the best practices. It flat out works. Once you see the drills, once you see the routines, you'll see what that next level looks like. These are drills not found anywhere else. These were not copied from anybody else. It's a curation and optimization of all the best drills that coaches should use. All the videos that break down every drill, every routine are triple edited, fast paced. You got the PDFs there. You can just print out the visual PDFs that have illustrations on them and take them out to practice to run the drills. There's a concise FAQ section for everything, for each drill, for each routine. It's the quickest and most organized, simplest way, the easiest path to being a great coach. You get instant access to it. You can access it from anywhere, your phone, your computer. And a big shout out to all the coaches that have already bought the 80-20 baseball coaching system. I even got an email yesterday about a coach that was looking forward to putting in the batting practice stations at their practice yesterday evening. You can get access in minutes. Everything is as streamlined as possible to get you from where you're at now to top-notch coaching, regardless of your background, your experience, or the level you're coaching at. You're coaching 9-year-olds or you're coaching college. The system is elite. It's designed for youth baseball, but it's good enough to use at any level. With that said, always great being here with all of you. I look forward to being back next week, next Tuesday, with our next episode. Until then, let's keep taking care of our health so we can be at our best for our families, our close friends, our team, our players. Let's take this information out there, this knowledge, and let's take the wisdom that we heard today and go put it into play. Like the late, great Tony Gwynn with 2 strikes. Go put it into play and make it happen. All right, everyone. Y'all take care. Until next week, adios.
This has been the 80-20 Baseball Podcast, the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass. We got this. Now, let's take the field.